Chosen one, God is preparing someone for you right now, and before that person arrives, there is something you need to hear, something that will determine whether you are actually ready to receive what is being prepared, or whether you will let it pass by unnoticed the way certain important things have passed by before. Do not close this video. Do not scroll past it and tell yourself this does not apply to you today. Something inside you has been quietly waiting, longer than you have admitted out loud, for a sense that this particular kind of waiting is not wasted, that the loneliness, the disappointment, the string of situations that did not work out the way you hoped, were not simply evidence that love is not meant for you. Today, this message is asking you to consider a different possibility entirely. Take a breath. Let your shoulders soften. Whatever doubt you have been carrying about whether real, lasting love is actually available to you, set it down for the next few minutes. This message is not here to give you false hope built on nothing. It is here to offer you something more useful, an honest look at what preparation actually looks like, both in the person being prepared for you, and in you yourself, because both sides of this equation matter equally. Consider, honestly, how many times you have heard some version of this message before, from a friend, a family member, a piece of content very similar to this one, and how many of those times the message faded quickly, absorbed into the background noise of daily life without producing any actual, lasting shift in how you approached your own waiting season. This is worth naming honestly, not to discourage you, but because recognizing this pattern is the first step toward actually breaking it this time, rather than allowing this message to become simply one more instance of temporary comfort followed by a quiet return to old habits of thought. Preparation takes time, and the timeline rarely matches the timeline your impatience would prefer. When something meaningful is being built, whether that is a person's character, their healing from past wounds, their readiness to show up fully in a relationship, that building happens gradually, through experience, through mistakes, through growth that cannot be rushed no matter how much either of you might wish it could move faster. If you are currently in a season of waiting, this does not necessarily mean something has gone wrong. It may simply mean the preparation is still underway, for them, for you, or for both of you simultaneously. This is genuinely difficult to sit with, especially during seasons when waiting feels heavy, when watching others around you find partnership while you continue waiting brings up feelings of being left behind or overlooked. These feelings are valid, and they deserve acknowledgement rather than dismissal. But feeling behind and actually being behind are not the same thing. Love does not operate on a single universal timeline that everyone must match in order to be considered on track. Your timeline is your own, shaped by your own healing, your own growth, your own specific path, and comparing it to anyone else's will rarely give you an accurate or helpful picture of where you actually stand. Think about a specific area of your own life where you already understand this principle intuitively, even if you have not yet applied it to your romantic timeline. Perhaps your career has unfolded on its own particular timeline, different from friends who advanced more quickly in some ways and more slowly in others. Perhaps a skill you developed took longer to master than you initially expected, yet the eventual mastery mattered more than the specific timeline it took to arrive at that competence. Apply this same understanding to your current romantic waiting. The timeline itself matters far less than what is actually being built during that time, both within you and, simultaneously, within the person eventually meeting you. The person being prepared for you is not the only one currently being prepared. You are being prepared as well, whether you have consciously recognized this preparation or not. Every difficult relationship that did not work out, every heartbreak that felt unbearable at the time, every moment of loneliness that forced you to sit with yourself more honestly than you might have otherwise chosen to, has been part of shaping you into someone capable of receiving and sustaining the kind of relationship you actually want, rather than simply the kind of relationship that feels familiar because it echoes old patterns from your past. This does not mean every past relationship needed to happen exactly as it did, or that pain is always somehow secretly a gift in disguise. Some pain is simply pain, and it deserves to be acknowledged honestly rather than immediately spiritualized into a lesson before you have even finished grieving it properly. But it is also true that most people, looking back honestly at their own growth, can identify ways that difficult past experiences taught them something about their own patterns, their own needs, their own capacity for honesty and vulnerability, that they would not have learned any other way. Consider, honestly, what you have learned about yourself through your past relationships and disappointments. Not to force a silver lining onto genuine pain, but to notice honestly whether some of what you learned has actually made you more ready for a healthy relationship now than you were before, more able to recognize red flags earlier, more able to communicate your needs clearly, more able to know what you actually want rather than simply accepting whatever seemed available at the time. Think back to a specific past relationship or connection that ultimately did not work out. Set aside, for a moment, the pain of that ending, and consider instead what that experience taught you about yourself specifically, your patterns, your needs, your boundaries, your capacity for honesty. This kind of honest reflection, done with genuine curiosity rather than self-punishment, tends to reveal that even difficult experiences have contributed something meaningful to your current level of self-understanding, even when the experience itself was genuinely painful and would not be something you would choose to repeat. Preparation is not passive. It is not simply a matter of waiting quietly while circumstances arrange themselves around you without any effort required on your part. Genuine preparation involves active participation, healing old wounds rather than carrying them unexamined into a future relationship, developing self-awareness about your own patterns, building a life that feels genuinely fulfilling on its own rather than depending entirely on a future partner to provide meaning that you have not yet found within yourself. If you have been waiting passively, hoping love will simply arrive and rescue you from an otherwise unsatisfying life, this message is asking you to reconsider that approach. A relationship built on top of an unexamined, unsatisfying foundation tends to inherit all the problems that existed before the relationship began, simply expressed differently within the new context of partnership. Building a genuinely fulfilling life now, independent of whether a partner has arrived yet, does not delay love. It actually prepares you to receive love more fully, because you arrive at the relationship as a whole person, rather than someone hoping the relationship itself will complete what feels missing. You likely carry specific old wounds from past relationships or even from earlier family experiences that continue shaping how you show up in romantic connection, often without your full conscious awareness of exactly how they are operating beneath the surface. Perhaps a fear of abandonment that makes you cling too tightly, too quickly, before genuine trust has actually had time to develop naturally. Perhaps a fear of vulnerability that keeps you guarded, holding back your true feelings until it feels safe, which sometimes means never actually feeling safe enough to fully open up at all. Perhaps a pattern of choosing partners who are unavailable in some way, emotionally distant, already committed elsewhere, or simply inconsistent, because unavailability feels strangely more familiar and therefore safer than the vulnerability required by someone who is actually fully present and available. These patterns deserve honest examination, not as an exercise in self-criticism, but as genuine preparation for the relationship you actually want. A partner who is being prepared for you deserves to meet a version of you that has done at least some of this examination, rather than a version still fully controlled by unexamined patterns that will likely repeat themselves regardless of how wonderful the new partner actually turns out to be. Waiting does not mean isolating yourself entirely from connection in the meantime. Some people, in an attempt to protect themselves from further disappointment, withdraw almost entirely from dating, from social connection, from any situation that might lead to potential heartbreak. This protective withdrawal is understandable, especially after significant past pain, but it can also become its own obstacle, keeping you so guarded that even when someone genuinely compatible does appear, you are not actually available enough, emotionally or practically, to recognize or receive the connection when it arrives. This does not mean forcing yourself into dating situations that feel genuinely unsafe or unwanted. It means examining honestly whether your current level of guardedness is proportionate to actual risk, or whether it has become so protective that it is now blocking genuine connection from reaching you at all, regardless of how ready the other person might be. The specific qualities you are hoping to find in a partner are worth examining honestly, distinguishing between genuine values that matter for long-term compatibility, and surface-level preferences that may be less important than they currently feel to you. Kindness, honesty, emotional availability, shared core values, these tend to matter significantly for long-term relationship health. Specific surface characteristics, certain physical preferences, certain lifestyle details, certain achievements or status markers, often matter far less than people initially assume, sometimes becoming obstacles that prevent someone from recognizing a genuinely compatible partner simply because they do not match a specific mental picture that was formed somewhat arbitrarily. Consider, honestly, which of your current relationship preferences reflect genuine values essential to your long-term happiness, and which ones might actually be more flexible than you have been treating them, potentially blocking connections that could genuinely work well simply because they do not match a specific image you have been holding on to. Try, as an exercise, listing several qualities you currently believe are essential in a future partner, and then examining each one honestly. Ask whether this quality genuinely reflects a core value necessary for your long-term well-being and compatibility, or whether it reflects a more superficial preference, perhaps shaped by media, social comparison, or a specific past experience that does not necessarily generalize to what would actually serve your happiness moving forward. This kind of honest examination often reveals that the list of truly essential qualities is shorter, and more focused on character and values, than the longer list of preferences a person might initially assume are all equally important. Timing in relationships involves both people arriving at a point of genuine readiness simultaneously, which means that even a genuinely compatible connection can fail to develop successfully if one person is not yet ready, regardless of how right the match might be in other respects. This is not always about a flaw in either person. Sometimes it is simply timing, two people encountering each other before one or both of them have finished the necessary preparation to build something lasting together. If a past connection that seemed promising did not work out, this does not necessarily mean it was the wrong connection entirely. It may simply mean the timing was not yet right, for reasons that had nothing to do with fundamental incompatibility. This distinction matters because it can help you release unnecessary self-blame or blame directed at the other person, replacing it instead with a more accurate understanding of what actually happened and why. Genuine partnership requires both people to bring their full, authentic selves to the relationship, rather than a curated, performed version designed to be more likable or acceptable. If you have developed a habit of hiding parts of yourself in relationships, whether specific opinions, specific needs, specific aspects of your personality you worry might be too much or not enough, this habit will need to be addressed at some point if you want the relationship you eventually build to be genuinely sustainable rather than built on a foundation of partial honesty. This does not mean revealing everything about yourself immediately upon meeting someone new. Healthy vulnerability develops gradually, as trust is built over time through consistent, positive experience with another person. But it does mean examining whether your general pattern in relationships tends toward authentic gradual revealing, or toward more permanent hiding, maintaining a performed version of yourself even once significant trust has already been established between you. The relationship being prepared for you is not meant to complete you, fill a void that nothing else could fill, or rescue you from an otherwise difficult life. This kind of expectation, however common it is in popular romantic narratives, tends to place an impossible burden on any relationship, because no other person can actually be responsible for supplying your entire sense of meaning, worth, or happiness. Relationships built on this expectation tend to become strained under the weight of expectations no human being could realistically fulfill indefinitely. A healthier expectation involves building your own sense of meaning and worth independently, allowing a future partner to enhance and share in a life that is already genuinely worth living, rather than depending on them to create that worth from nothing. This shift in expectation does not diminish the significance of partnership. It simply places it in a more sustainable position, one built on genuine addition rather than desperate need. Trust, both trust in another person and trust in the process of preparation itself, develops gradually, through consistent experience over time, rather than through a single decision made once and then never revisited. If you have struggled with trust in past relationships, this struggle likely will not disappear automatically simply because a new, genuinely trustworthy person eventually arrives. Trust needs to be actively rebuilt, gradually, through consistent positive experience with this specific new person, even if that person has done nothing themselves to warrant the caution you might initially bring into the relationship based on past experience with someone else entirely. Extending patience to yourself during this gradual trust-building process is important. It is unrealistic to expect yourself to trust immediately and completely, simply because the new relationship appears healthier than past ones. Allow trust to build gradually, through actual accumulated experience, rather than forcing yourself to feel a level of security that has not yet actually been earned through real, lived experience together. The way you speak about your own past relationships, both to yourself internally and to others when the topic arises, shapes how you carry that history forward into whatever comes next. If your internal narrative about past relationships has become bitter, framing yourself purely as a victim of other people's poor choices without any honest examination of your own role or patterns, this narrative can quietly poison your ability to trust and connect fully with someone new, even someone who has done absolutely nothing to deserve the residual bitterness carried over from previous experiences entirely unrelated to them. This does not mean blaming yourself unfairly for genuine mistreatment you experienced at someone else's hands. Some past relationships genuinely involved poor treatment that was not your fault, and acknowledging this honestly matters. But even within genuinely difficult past relationships, there is usually something to learn about your own patterns, your own choices, your own growth, and finding this balance, honest acknowledgement of what happened alongside honest self-reflection about your own role, tends to produce a healthier foundation for future connection than either extreme alone, pure self-blame or pure victim narrative, tends to provide. Physical and emotional health matter significantly in how ready you actually are to build and sustain a healthy relationship, beyond simply the psychological patterns already discussed. Chronic stress, poor sleep, neglected physical health, these do not simply affect you individually. They affect your capacity for patience, for emotional regulation, for showing up consistently and calmly within a relationship, especially during the inevitable difficult moments that arise even within genuinely healthy partnerships. If your physical and emotional health have been neglected during this season of waiting, consider this an important part of your preparation as well, not separate from readiness for partnership, but genuinely integral to it. A body and mind that are depleted have less capacity for the patience, generosity, and emotional presence that healthy relationships require consistently over time, regardless of how compatible the actual partnership might otherwise be. Financial stability, or at least a healthy, non-anxious relationship with your own finances, contributes more to relationship readiness than most people initially consider when thinking about romantic preparation specifically. This does not mean you need to have achieved some specific level of wealth before you are ready for partnership. It means that chronic financial anxiety, poorly managed financial stress, tends to create tension that inevitably affects relationships, sometimes significantly, regardless of how emotionally compatible two people might otherwise be with each other. If financial stress has been a significant source of anxiety in your life, addressing this honestly, through the kind of practical steps already well established in financial guidance generally, contributes meaningfully to your overall readiness for partnership, even though it might not initially seem directly related to romantic connection specifically. Friendships and family relationships that are healthy and well-maintained provide a foundation that romantic partnership can build upon, rather than needing to provide everything that these other relationships already provide adequately on their own. If you have neglected friendships significantly, perhaps hoping that a future romantic partner will eventually fill the social and emotional needs currently unmet, this expectation places an unrealistic burden on that future relationship, one that healthy friendships and family connections are actually better suited to fulfill alongside partnership, rather than being replaced entirely by it. Consider, honestly, whether your friendships and family relationships are currently healthy and well-maintained, or whether they have been neglected during a period of waiting for romantic partnership to arrive and somehow solve this broader social need. Strengthening these other relationships now benefits you regardless of when partnership eventually arrives, and it also reduces the unrealistic pressure that might otherwise be placed entirely on a future romantic partner to fulfill every relational need you currently have. Now that these things have been shared, consider what actually needs to happen next, because understanding the nature of preparation means very little without translating that understanding into how you actually live during this current season of waiting. Begin by examining honestly which old patterns from past relationships still seem to be operating in your current life, whether you are currently dating or not. Notice these patterns without harsh self-judgment, simply as information worth understanding more fully as you continue moving forward. Consider writing these patterns down somewhere private, not to dwell on them obsessively, but to bring them into clearer view than they currently occupy while remaining purely as vague, half-formed impressions floating somewhere in the back of your mind. Naming a pattern clearly, in writing, tends to make it easier to actually recognize when it arises in real time, giving you a genuine opportunity to respond differently than you might have responded automatically before this clearer recognition existed. Consider, too, whether you have built a life that feels genuinely fulfilling on its own terms, independent of whether a partner has arrived yet. If significant areas feel neglected, friendships, personal interests, physical health, a sense of purpose beyond romantic partnership, this season of waiting offers a genuine opportunity to strengthen these areas, building a foundation that will serve you well regardless of when partnership eventually arrives. Think about whether your current level of guardedness matches actual risk, or whether it has become disproportionate, protecting you from genuine connection as effectively as it protects you from further disappointment. If guardedness has become excessive, consider small, manageable steps toward greater openness, not reckless vulnerability with people who have not earned trust, but a gradual willingness to remain open to connection rather than closed off entirely as a default protective stance. Release, as much as you genuinely can, the pressure of a specific timeline for when this preparation should be complete, both for you and for the person being prepared to meet you. Timelines built on comparison to others rarely produce anything except unnecessary suffering, and preparation, genuine preparation, unfolds according to its own necessary timing rather than according to external pressure or impatience, however understandable that impatience might feel during difficult seasons of waiting. Think about the version of yourself who will eventually meet this person being prepared for you. What qualities does that version of you possess? What healing has that version of you completed? What life has that version of you built, independent of partnership, that will allow the eventual relationship to enhance an already meaningful life rather than being expected to create meaning from nothing? Begin, today, taking small steps toward becoming that version of yourself, not because you must be perfect before love can arrive. Perfection is never actually required or even possible, but because genuine preparation, on your part, honors the preparation happening simultaneously on the other side of this waiting period. Picture this future version of yourself with as much specific detail as you can genuinely imagine, not a fantasy disconnected from reality, but a realistic, grounded picture of someone slightly further along the path of healing and growth than you currently find yourself. How does this version of you handle conflict differently than you currently might? How does this version of you communicate needs more clearly than perhaps comes naturally to you right now? What daily habits or practices might this version of you have developed that currently remain undeveloped in your actual daily life today? Use this picture, not as a standard to judge yourself harshly against, but as a gentle, encouraging direction to continue moving toward, one small step at a time. Consider, too, that the waiting itself, however difficult it currently feels, is not wasted time. It is not simply an obstacle standing between you and the life you actually want. It is, itself, part of the process, an opportunity to build the exact qualities and the exact life that will make the eventual relationship stronger and more sustainable than it could have been if it had arrived before this necessary preparation was complete. This does not mean forcing gratitude for a difficult season that genuinely involves real loneliness and real disappointment. Those feelings deserve honest acknowledgement, not immediate spiritual bypassing into forced positivity. But alongside that honest acknowledgement, it is also possible to hold a genuine belief that this waiting period is serving a purpose, even when that purpose is not yet fully visible or understood from where you currently stand within it. Think about how you will recognize genuine readiness when it eventually arrives, both in yourself and in the person eventually meeting you. Readiness often looks less dramatic than people expect, less like a sudden lightning bolt of complete transformation, and more like a quiet, gradual accumulation of small changes, increased self-awareness, healthier patterns, a life that feels genuinely worth living independent of partnership. If you notice these small changes occurring in yourself over time, this is evidence that the preparation is actually working, even during seasons when external circumstances have not yet visibly shifted to match the internal growth taking place. Before this message reaches its true close, take one final moment for yourself. Consider one specific old pattern you are ready to begin examining honestly, one small step you can take today toward becoming more genuinely ready for the connection currently being prepared for you. This does not need to be dramatic. It simply needs to be real, a genuine beginning rather than another vague intention that fades quickly once this message ends and ordinary life resumes. Trust that the preparation happening on both sides of this waiting period is genuine, even when it feels slow, even when doubt arises about whether any of this is actually true or simply wishful thinking offered to ease difficult feelings temporarily. Genuine preparation rarely feels dramatic while it is happening. It often only becomes clearly visible in retrospect, once the relationship has actually arrived and you can look back honestly at how the waiting period actually served a genuine purpose, shaping both of you into people capable of building something lasting together. There is one more layer worth adding before this message truly comes to its close, something that ties everything shared today into a single, practical thread you can carry forward through the remainder of this waiting season. Think about the specific moment, right now, as this message comes to a close, and notice honestly how you feel. Some combination, perhaps, of hope, skepticism, longing, and maybe even a quiet fatigue from having heard similar messages before that did not seem to translate into any actual change in your circumstances. All of these reactions are valid. This message cannot promise you a specific timeline, a specific person, or a guarantee that everything will unfold exactly as you hope. What it can offer is a more useful framework for how to spend this waiting period well, regardless of exactly when it concludes. Consider, too, that genuine readiness for partnership is not a single threshold you cross once and then remain permanently on the other side of. It is an ongoing practice, one that continues even after partnership arrives, because healthy relationships require continued growth, continued honesty, continued willingness to examine your own patterns even once the initial excitement of new connection has settled into something more established and long-term. The work described throughout this message is not simply preparation for a single future moment. It is the beginning of an ongoing practice that will continue serving you throughout whatever relationship eventually develops, and throughout your life more broadly regardless of romantic circumstances specifically. Think about how you will handle the inevitable moments, in the coming weeks and months, when doubt resurfaces, when loneliness feels particularly heavy, when watching others find partnership brings up difficult feelings about your own continued waiting. These moments are normal, not evidence that something has gone wrong with the preparation process. Allow yourself to feel these difficult emotions honestly, without immediately forcing yourself back into forced positivity, while also gently returning, when you are able, to the practical steps this message has outlined, continuing the preparation even during moments when faith in the eventual outcome feels harder to access than usual. Consider keeping some form of simple record as you continue this season, noting small changes you notice in yourself over time, patterns you have successfully interrupted, growth you have observed even in small, seemingly unremarkable ways. This record becomes valuable evidence, something to return to during difficult moments of doubt, proof that genuine growth has been occurring even during a season that might otherwise feel like simply waiting without any visible progress to show for it. Remember, finally, that this message was never meant to suggest that everything currently difficult in your life will be immediately resolved once partnership eventually arrives. Partnership, even genuinely healthy partnership, does not erase all difficulty or automatically resolve every challenge you currently face. It simply adds a companion to walk alongside you through both the difficulties and the joys that continue, in various forms, throughout every stage of life regardless of relationship status. Building this realistic understanding now, rather than an idealized fantasy that no real relationship could ever actually fulfill, itself constitutes an important part of the preparation this message has been describing throughout. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today. Be gentle with yourself as you continue this season of preparation, one honest, deliberate choice at a time.